What Justin Trudeau and the Liberals virtually always do when they're getting shellacked in the polls is they pivot to abortion. Abortion in Canada, of course, has been decriminalized throughout all 9 months of pregnancy. Canada is the only developed country with that status quo, and yet Justin Trudeau considers it convenient to constantly act as if abortion rights are under threat. I really wish they were. I work full-time for the Canadian Centre for Bioethical Reform, organization that's dedicated to making abortion unthinkable. And so if abortion rights right now, from a legal perspective, truly were at threat, I'd be doing a good news segment about that. Unfortunately, that's not the case. But what Trudeau does is he always returns to Old Faithful. He returns to abortion. So here is one video clip of him in the House of Commons recently. Check it out.
Mr. Speaker, every time the Leader of the Opposition gets up on his feet to rhyme off his little show, his party members applaud enthusiastically. But the 2 times he just stood up to suggest that he is perhaps pro-choice, silence from his team, Mr. Speaker. He cannot protect women's rights from the members of his own caucus, Mr. Speaker. That's not standing up for women. That's not protecting the future. That's not freedom in this country.
Now, that performance wasn't surprising. I've written probably a couple of dozen articles on Trudeau's comments on abortion since 2015, and the goal is twofold. I mentioned earlier on an earlier episode of this podcast, one of Trudeau's goals here is not to get more votes for himself, because anybody who's a diehard abortion supporter is probably already in his corner, or maybe voting Green or NDP for that matter. What he's trying to do is he's trying to really suppress conservative voter turnout, because most pro-life people vote conservative, and Pierre Poilievre is not pro-life. In fact, he is avowedly pro-choice, more so even than Stephen Harper. Stephen Harper did enforce the abortion status quo, but he would never say whether or not he was pro-choice or pro-life, and it was actually difficult to tell what his personal views on the issue are. Pierre Poilievre was pro-life. He had a perfect pro-life voting record, and my former colleague Stephanie Gray, who's a renowned abortion debater who later moved to the States, remembers actually seeing Pierre Poilievre at a national campus Life Network conference years ago. This is a conference for pro-life student activists, which means that Pierre didn't just casually identify as pro-life. He identified as pro-life strongly enough to attend a conference where activists were actually getting trained. And I'd wondered for a long time where he changed his mind, but it seems pretty clear. His biographer, my friend Andrew Lawton, said that essentially he married a pro-choice woman from Quebec, and that is where he got his views on abortion from. And so Pierre is very pro-choice. He constantly affirms the fact that he's not going to touch the abortion status quo. So Trudeau has to work really, really hard to try and make abortion a political issue. I wish our side was doing that. To be fair, though, to Justin Trudeau, he is genuinely passionate about this issue. And you can see that in all the clips where he talks about abortion. He gets really fired up. He often gets intensely angry when he's talking about it. He does some real foam fleck performances over the last several years, and almost always when he's talking about abortion. And my view is that the reason for that is sort of deeply personal for Justin Trudeau, because abortion is actually a fundamental part of the Trudeau family legacy. Most of you who are Canadian will probably know that it was Justin Trudeau's father, Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau, who initially decriminalized abortion back in 1969. And Trudeau, Pierre that is, Trudeau the Elder, despite the fact that he claimed to be a Catholic and he did attend Mass very, very regularly, not only did he bring abortion in, but he lived a very sexually revolutionary lifestyle, famously dated and slept with a lot of rich and famous people. And he fathered a daughter with Deborah Coyne at the age of 71. And what's interesting about that, this would be, of course, Trudeau's half-sister. He took pains to inform Deborah Coyne that he had no desire to be a parent to his only daughter, and even discouraged Deborah Coyne and his daughter from living in the same city as him. He had a very pro-choice approach to parenting, in other words. So Pierre Trudeau is one half of this puzzle. Abortion is a fundamental part of his political legacy, and he had a very pro-choice approach to his own parenting. But I think his passion for abortion, Justin's that is, lies not with his father, but more with his mother Margaret Trudeau, who has talked openly about the fact that she had an abortion. She expressed her support for abortion and birth control very early on, telling the media way back in the 70s already that her view on these issues was very liberal. And later in an interview she granted to Playgirl magazine in 1979, it was a bit of a train wreck interview. Vanity Fair would refer to it as one of the biggest mistakes of her life. She recounted, among other things, that she'd had an abortion at the age of 17. And I wonder sometimes if the fact that our current Prime Minister's half-sibling was aborted has ever given him any pause at all, or if that revelation has instead really informed and solidified his own support for abortion. We see this in pro-life activism all the time, that somebody, if they're really angry and passionately pro-choice, they're usually pro-choice not for just sort of vaguely political reasons or philosophical reasons. Usually if they're pro-abortion in a way that indicates it's a deeply held belief, they're often not defending abortion itself, they're defending somebody that they care about. And so they don't want to say abortion is wrong because they don't want to say their mother was wrong, or their girlfriend was wrong, or their sister was wrong. And when we're talking about abortion on the streets, this means that we have to actually get to the heart of the issue, find out why they support abortion, and address that. And so I think the fact that Margaret Trudeau talked about having an abortion and that at least one of Justin Trudeau's half-siblings died by abortion has a lot to do with where his support comes from. But I do wish that Conservatives would attack Justin Trudeau more solidly on his very overt anti-Christian bigotry, which almost always comes out, again, when he's talking about abortion. Consider this clip here for just a minute.
Speaker, it's obvious that the Leader of the Opposition really didn't like that I went down to New York City to talk directly to Americans. Perhaps he would have been happier if I accepted an all-expenses-paid trip perhaps down to Florida to appear at an anti-abortion church. I know he would have been all right with that because that's what he allows of his own members.
Now, I can't find the article in Le Journal de Montréal. I probably butchered that pronunciation. It's a Quebecois publication that Trudeau is referring to in that clip. The Liberal Party also posted that headline as an attack ad on September 24. But the fact that appearing at a pro-life church is considered a line of attack is very, very revealing. Trudeau calls himself a Catholic, although he doesn't attend church much, and he publicly rejects Catholic Church teaching on, at very minimum, both abortion and the entire LGBT agenda. When he does show up for church, though, he is appearing at an anti-abortion church. When he met with the Pope, he was appearing at an anti-abortion church because the Roman Catholic Church, of course, is pro-life. The same thing would be true for many of his MPs and many other parliamentarians, period, because many very pro-abortion politicians still attend very, very pro-life churches. And when they do so, they are appearing at an anti-abortion church. But according to Trudeau and apparently the Liberals' comm shop, which probably came up with this ad, this is apparently something to be angrily condemned in Parliament. Now, this is an opportunity for Conservatives to go on the attack. I've said this many times on this podcast already, even though we're only a few episodes in. There's an enormous amount of common ground that the Conservative Party of Canada could make with social conservatives because Justin Trudeau provides them opportunity after opportunity to defend Canadians who hold to the same views that Canadians have held throughout the majority of Canadian history. And in this case, the tent is even bigger because millions of Canadians worship in anti-abortion churches and indeed anti-abortion temples, synagogues, mosques, gurdwaras, and other houses of worship. And the Conservatives should respond to this line of attack, not by reiterating again that they're not going to change abortion law in Canada. They should ask Justin Trudeau and all of his intermediaries, do they believe that Canadians who worship at these places should be attacked for doing so? Does Justin Trudeau and the Liberals think that attending an anti-abortion church and actually believing the teachings of that church, do they think that's disqualifying for participation in public life? And if they do, how can they expect those Canadians to vote for their party? I attend an anti-abortion church, and with the exception of a few dying institutions like the United Church, which earned the nickname the NDP at prayer for a reason, so do those who attend Catholic, Orthodox, Baptist, Pentecostal, and most evangelical churches. Except for the churches that have caved on these issues and gone mainline, most of which are slowly but surely dying off, most Canadians who attend church attend an anti-abortion church. And the same thing, again, is true for Hindus, Sikhs, Muslims, Orthodox Jews, Mormons. Most people adhere to a religious tradition that explicitly condemns abortion. And all of the traditions I just mentioned do in fact explicitly condemn abortion. But as I've noted before, Trudeau and those around him are motivated explicitly by anti-Christian bigotry. And that's one of the reasons he's taken such a lackadaisical approach, for example, to the fact that over 100 Christian churches have been either vandalized or burned down since the 2021 lie that there was graves outside residential schools filled with children who it was presumed had been abused or killed. Justin Trudeau's Canada has no room for believing Christians, and Christians should notice that. Justin Trudeau's Canada is one of pride parades, not pro-life marches. And conservatives should call him out on that, because Trudeau talks a lot about inclusion, but what he means by inclusion is people look differently but think the same. They might have different skin colors, different races, different cultures, but they all believe the exact same thing on abortion and the LGBT agenda and everything else. And by making these attacks, he's actually left his flank wide open. And I really wish the Conservatives would think of going for it. Thanks everyone for watching that clip. If you'd like to check out our content on other platforms, you can find us on Rumble, Spotify, iTunes, or wherever else you get your content. Be sure to like and subscribe to this channel and spread the clip around if you like the content. Thanks so much.